The video had 17 million views in 6 hours. Nicholas Hill stood frozen in his penthouse office, his billion-dollar empire crumbling around him as he watched the screen. An old black woman, frail and trembling, collapsed on a New York sidewalk while pedestrians stepped over her like she was trash. The camera zoomed in on her wrinkled hands clutching a faded photograph. Nicholas felt his lungs seize. That photo showed a little boy with gap teeth and bright eyes, him at 7 years old. The woman wasn't just any beggar. She was Dorothy Hill, his mother. The billionaire everyone called a self-made success story had left his own mother to die on the streets. If you think you know where this is going, stay until the end, because the betrayal runs deeper than you can imagine, and what Nicholas does next will leave you speechless. Nicholas's phone exploded with notifications, text messages, emails, news alerts. His PR team was in full panic mode. The hashtag #BillionaireMama was trending worldwide, and every comment was a dagger. How does a man worth $3.2 billion let his own mother beg for coins? One tweet read with 40,000 retweets. Another showed a side-by-side photo, Nicholas in a custom Italian suit at a charity gala last week, and his mother Dorothy curled up on cold concrete with a cardboard sign that said, "Please help. God bless." His hands trembled as he scrolled. This wasn't supposed to happen. Dorothy wasn't supposed to be found. 23 years. 23 years since he walked away and never looked back. 23 years since he changed his life and erased her from it. Now the world was watching, and Nicholas Hill, the man who built tech empire Afrotech Solutions from nothing, was about to lose everything he spent decades building. His executive assistant Yanel burst through the door, her face pale. "Mr. Hill, the board is calling an emergency meeting. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, they're all outside the building. Your wife is blowing up my phone. And, sir," she hesitated, her voice dropping to a whisper, "your mother is at Bellevue Hospital. The video was filmed 3 days ago. She's been in critical condition since yesterday." Nicholas felt the room spin. Critical condition. His mother was dying, and he didn't even know she was alive until a stranger's iPhone made her suffering go viral. Yanel placed a tablet on his desk. The headline read, "Tech billionaire Nicholas Hill abandons elderly mother. America demands answers." Underneath was a photo of Dorothy from 30 years ago, young and beautiful, holding a chubby-cheeked Nicholas at his high school graduation. The contrast was devastating. That woman had sacrificed everything for him, and this was how he repaid her. "Schedule the board meeting for tomorrow," Nicholas said, his voice hollow. "I'm going to the hospital." Yanel nodded but grabbed his arm before he could leave. "Sir, there are reporters everywhere. If you go now, they'll eat you alive. Let me coordinate security. Prepare a statement." Nicholas yanked his arm free. "My mother is dying. Yanel, I don't care about the cameras." He grabbed his keys and stormed toward the private elevator, but his phone rang. The caller ID made his blood run cold. Victoria Hill, his wife, the woman who had stood beside him for 15 years, who smiled for cameras and hosted charity dinners and knew nothing about Dorothy. Nicholas answered. "Where are you?" Victoria's voice was ice. "I'm watching the news, Nicholas. Everyone is watching the news. Is it true? Is that woman really your mother?" Nicholas closed his eyes. "Yes." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Victoria spoke again, and her words cut deeper than any headline. "If you walk out that door and go to her, don't bother coming home." Nicholas stood at the elevator, his finger hovering over the button. On one side was a life he built, the penthouse, the company, the reputation, the marriage. On the other side was a woman who gave him life, now dying alone in a hospital bed. His phone buzzed again. A text from his lawyer. "Do not go to the hospital. Do not make a statement. Let me handle this." Another text from his publicist. "Damage control meeting in 20 minutes. Stay put." But then a new notification appeared. It was a news alert with a video link. Breaking, dying beggar woman's final words about her billionaire son. Nicholas clicked it. The shaky footage showed paramedics lifting Dorothy onto a stretcher. Her eyes were barely open, her voice a raspy whisper. The paramedic leaned close, and the camera caught her words. "Tell my Nicky, I forgive him. I never stopped loving him." The video ended. Nicholas felt something break inside his chest. The elevator doors opened. He stepped inside, but as the doors began to close, he heard a voice behind him, smooth, familiar, and filled with venom. "Going somewhere, Nicholas." He turned. Standing in his office doorway was Marcus Chen, his business partner and best friend of 20 years. The man who helped him build Afro Tech Solutions from a garage startup to a billion-dollar empire. Marcus's smile was cold. "We need to talk, right now, because if you leave, you won't have a company to come back to. Don't click away yet, because in the next chapter, you'll discover the dark secret Marcus has been hiding and why Dorothy's appearance threatens to destroy more than just Nicholas's reputation. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this story is about to get a whole lot darker." Nicholas stepped out of the elevator and turned to face Marcus Chen, the man he'd trusted with everything for 2 decades. Marcus stood in the doorway of the penthouse office, his expensive suit perfectly tailored, his expression unreadable. "We don't have time for this, Marcus," Nicholas said, his voice rough with barely controlled emotion. "My mother is dying. Whatever you need to say can wait." Marcus laughed, a cold, bitter sound that made Nicholas's skin crawl. "Your mother? The woman you told me was dead? The woman whose existence you erased from every biography, every interview, every company document." He stepped forward, pulling out his phone. "The woman you paid $750,000 to disappear 23 years ago." Nicholas felt his world tilt. How do I know?" Marcus's smile was razor-sharp. "Because I'm the one who's been sending her money every month for the last 5 years, Nicholas. $2,000. Cash, delivered to whatever shelter or street corner she was living on. I'm the one who's been keeping your dirty little secret from destroying everything we built." The words hit Nicholas like a physical blow. He stumbled backward, gripping the elevator door frame for support. "What are you talking about? I never paid anyone, liar." Marcus's voice was pure venom now. He swiped his phone screen and turned it toward Nicholas. Bank statements, transaction records, emails, all bearing Nicholas's signature, his account numbers, dated 23 years ago. $750,000 wired to a Patricia Morrison with the memo line, "Final payment, silence guaranteed." Nicholas's legs went weak. Patricia Morrison, his ex-wife, the woman he'd married fresh out of college, the woman who'd helped him escape his old life, the woman who'd promised to handle his mother discreetly while he focused on building his career. "Patricia told me she set Dorothy up in a nice apartment in New Jersey," Nicholas whispered, his mind racing. "She said Dorothy agreed to stay out of my life, that she understood I needed to focus on success, that she'd be taken care of." Marcus cut him off with a sharp laugh. "And you believed her? You handed $750,000 to that snake and never checked? Never visited? Never called?" Nicholas's hands curled into fists. The truth was crashing down on him like an avalanche, and each revelation was more devastating than the last. Patricia had lied. For 23 years, she had lied. Dorothy had never received that money. She had never agreed to disappear. She had been abandoned, stolen from, left to rot while Nicholas climbed the ladder of success on the foundation of her sacrifice. "Where's Patricia now?" Nicholas demanded, his voice shaking with rage. Marcus's expression shifted, something dark and satisfied flickering in his eyes. "That's the interesting part. Patricia Morrison, your beloved ex-wife, married Robert Thornton 6 months after your divorce was finalized. Robert Thornton, CEO of Thornton Industries, our biggest competitor. The same Robert Thornton who's been trying to buy out Afro Tech Solutions for the last 3 years." He paused, letting the implications sink in. "And here's the kicker, Nicholas. That $750,000, it was seed money. Patricia and Robert used your money to start a shell company that's been systematically sabotaging our contracts, poaching our clients, and tanking our stock value for 2 decades. The room spun. Nicholas grabbed his desk for support, his mind struggling to process the magnitude of the betrayal. Patricia hadn't just stolen from his mother. She'd stolen his money, used it to fund his competitors, and spent 23 years destroying everything he built while he remained oblivious. And Marcus had known. Marcus had known for 5 years and said nothing. Why didn't you tell me? Nicholas's voice was barely a whisper. Why did you keep sending her money? Why did you protect me? Marcus's face hardened. Because I'm not like you, Nicholas. When I found Dorothy 5 years ago, living in a cardboard box in the Bronx, clutching that picture of you like it was the only thing keeping her alive, I couldn't walk away. She told me everything. How Patricia showed up at her apartment, told her you never wanted to see her again, took every penny of that money, and evicted her. How Dorothy tried to find you, but Patricia had her arrested for trespassing. How she spent years in and out of shelters, too ashamed to contact you because she thought you hated her. Tears streamed down Marcus's face now, his composure finally cracking. I sent her money because someone had to. I kept your secret because I believe you deserved a chance to make it right. But you never did, Nicholas. You never even looked for her. Nicholas felt something inside him shatter completely. Every achievement, every success, every award and accolade, it was all built on Dorothy's suffering. He had abandoned her, and when given the chance to find the truth, he had chosen comfort over courage. I'm going to the hospital, Nicholas said, his voice hollow. And then I'm going to destroy Patricia and Robert. I'm going to take back every dollar, expose every lie, and make them pay for what they did to my mother. Marcus shook his head slowly, and the pity in his eyes was worse than any anger. You can't, Nicholas. That's what I've been trying to tell you. If you go after Patricia and Robert, they'll release the documents, the fake signatures, the forged emails, the evidence that makes it look like you knew everything and orchestrated Dorothy's abandonment yourself. They've been sitting on this for years, waiting for the perfect moment. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. The board meeting tomorrow isn't about damage control. It's a coup. Robert Thornton bought out 3 of our major shareholders last week. If you step 1 foot outside this building tonight, they'll vote you out, seize your assets, and destroy you. And your mother? She'll die knowing her son lost everything trying to save her. The elevator doors started to close. Nicholas had seconds to decide. Stay and fight to save his empire, or go to Dorothy and lose everything. His finger hovered over the button. Then his phone buzzed one final time. A text from an unknown number. Your mother just coded. Doctors don't think she'll make it through the night. Bellevue Hospital staff. Nicholas looked at Marcus, then at the closing elevator doors, then at his phone. His mother was dying. His empire was crumbling. And somewhere in the city, Patricia and Robert were watching, waiting for him to make the wrong move so they could finish what they started 23 years ago. The clock is ticking, and Nicholas has to make an impossible choice. Will he save his dying mother or his billion-dollar empire? And what happens when he discovers there's one more betrayal he never saw coming? Smash that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think Nicholas should do, because next chapter is going to blow your mind. Nicholas hit the elevator button, and the doors opened immediately. Marcus lunged forward, trying to grab his arm, but Nicholas was already inside. You're making a mistake. Marcus shouted as the doors closed between them. They'll destroy you. Everything we built will be gone. But Nicholas didn't care no more. His mother was dying, and for 23 years he had chosen everything else over her. Not tonight. Not anymore. The elevator plummeted 4 to 7 floors, and with each passing second, Nicholas felt the weight of his empire lifting off his shoulders. Afro Tech Solutions, the penthouse, the cars, the reputation. What did any of it matter if Dorothy died alone thinking her son hated her? When the doors opened to the parking garage, Nicholas was met with chaos. News vans blocked the exit, reporters swarmed his Bentley, and camera flashes exploded like lightning. Security guards tried to hold them back, but it was useless. "Mr. Hill, is it true you abandoned your mother? Did you know she was homeless? How much money did you pay to keep her silent?" Nicholas ignored them all, shouldering through the crowd toward his car. A young black reporter, no older than 25, grabbed his sleeve. "My grandmother died on the streets, Mr. Hill. Alone. Forgotten. Just like your mother. Tell me, was your $1 billion worth it?" Nicholas stopped. He looked at the young man, saw the pain and anger in his eyes, and realized this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about every abandoned parent, every forgotten elder, every family torn apart by greed and ambition, every billionaire who saw his elderly mother begging on the street and turned away. "No," Nicholas said quietly, his voice cracking. "It wasn't worth a damn thing." The crowd went silent. Cameras zoomed in. Nicholas knew whatever he said next would be replayed 1,000,000 times, analyzed and criticized and weaponized against him. But he didn't care. "My name is Nicholas Hill, and 23 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. I let someone convince me that my mother's love was a burden, that her presence would hold me back, that success meant leaving her behind. I was wrong. I was a coward. And tonight, my mother is dying because I chose money over her." His voice grew stronger, fueled by decades of buried guilt and shame. "But I'm not that man anymore. I'm going to her now, and I don't care what it cost me. I don't care if I lose my company, my reputation, or every dollar I ever made. Because the only thing that matters is that Dorothy Hill knows her son loves her before she takes her last breath." The reporters erupted with questions, but Nicholas was already in his car, tires screaming as he peeled out of the garage. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Victoria, the board members, his lawyers. But he silenced it all. The drive to Bellevue Hospital should have taken 30 minutes in traffic, but Nicholas made it in 12, running red lights and weaving through lanes like a man possessed. When he screeched into the emergency bay, security guards rushed toward him, but Nicholas was already out of the car and sprinting toward the entrance. "I'm here for Dorothy Hill," he shouted at the reception desk, breathless and wild-eyed. "Room 407. She coded. Where is she? Is she alive?" The nurse's expression was carefully neutral, the look of someone trained to deliver bad news gently. "Sir, I need you to calm down. Are you family?" "I'm her son." The words fell foreign on his tongue, shameful after all these years. "I'm Nicholas. I'm her son, and I need to see her right now." The nurse's eyes widened with recognition. She'd seen the videos, the headlines, the viral tweets. Everyone had. "Room 407, 4th floor," she said quietly. "But, Mr. Hill, the doctors are with her now. You need to prepare yourself." Nicholas didn't wait for the elevator. He took the stairs 3 at a time, his expensive shoes slipping on linoleum, his designer suit jacket abandoned somewhere in his wake. 4th floor, room 407. The door was closed, and through the small window, Nicholas could see doctors and nurses surrounding a hospital bed, working frantically. Machines beeped erratically. Someone called for medications. Nicholas tried the door, but a nurse blocked him. "Sir, you can't go in right now. That's my mother." Nicholas's voice shattered. "That's my mother in there, and she's dying because of me. Let me in. Please, let me in." The nurse's eyes softened with pity. She glanced back at the room, then at Nicholas, and made a decision that went against every protocol. 2 minutes, she whispered, opening the door just wide enough for him to slip through. Nicholas stepped inside, and his legs nearly gave out. Dorothy Hill lay on the hospital bed, impossibly small and fragile, her beautiful dark skin now gray and papery, her body connected to a dozen tubes and wires. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow and labored. She looked like she weighed 80 pounds, soaking wet. The woman who had once carried him on her back, who had worked 3 jobs to keep him fed, who had sacrificed everything so he could have a future, reduced to this. Because of him. Nicholas pushed past the doctors and grabbed Dorothy's hand. It was cold, so cold it terrified him. "Mama," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Mama, I'm here. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. For a moment, nothing happened. The machines continued their frantic beeping. The doctors exchanged grim looks. Then Dorothy's eyelids fluttered. Slowly, painfully, she opened her eyes. They were cloudy with age and sickness, but when they focused on Nicholas's face, something sparked: recognition, love, forgiveness, all at once. Her cracked lips moved, struggling to form words. Nicholas leaned closer, his 8 inches from her mouth. "Nicky," she breathed, her voice barely audible. "My sweet boy, you came." "I'm here, Mama. I'm right here. I'm never leaving you again." Dorothy's hand squeezed as weakly. A tear rolled down her weathered cheek. "I knew you would come." Then her eyes shifted past Nicholas, focusing on something or someone behind him. Her expression changed. The love drained from her face, replaced by pure terror. Her grip on Nicholas's hand tightened with surprising strength. Her breathing accelerated. The machine screamed warnings. "No," Dorothy gasped, her eyes locked on whoever stood in the doorway. "Not you. Not now. Nicky, don't let them." Her words were cut off as her body convulsed. The heart monitor flatlined. Doctors rushed forward, pushing Nicholas aside, shouting orders. Nicholas spun around to see who his mother had been looking at, who had frightened her so badly in her final moments. Standing in the doorway, perfectly composed in an elegant black dress, was a woman Nicholas hadn't seen in 23 years. Patricia Morrison, his ex-wife, the woman who stole everything. And she was smiling. What is Patricia doing at the hospital? How did she know Nicholas would be there? And what did Dorothy try to warn Nicholas about before her heart stopped? Comment below if you think Dorothy survives this and hit that subscribe button. Next chapter reveals a conspiracy so twisted, it'll make your head spin. The hospital room erupted into controlled chaos as doctors swarmed Dorothy's bed, working desperately to restart her heart. Nicholas stood frozen, his eyes locked on Patricia Morrison in the doorway. She looked exactly as he remembered, elegant, poised, dangerous, except now there were fine lines around her eyes and her smile carried 23 years of victory. "Hello, Nicholas," Patricia said smoothly, stepping into the room as if she owned it. "I heard you were here. Touching, really, this little reunion. A bit late, don't you think?" Nicholas's hands clenched into fists. "Get out. Get out right now before you what?" Patricia interrupted, her voice dripping with amusement. "Make a scene? Call security? You're already the most hated man in America. Darling, what's one more outburst?" She glanced at Dorothy's convulsing body with cold indifference. "Besides, I have every right to be here. I'm listed as Dorothy Hill's emergency contact. Have been for 23 years. The words hit Nicholas like a sledgehammer. "That's impossible. You told me she wanted nothing to do with me. You said she agreed to disappear." Patricia laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "And you believed me. Good. You were so easy to manipulate back then. So desperate to escape your past. So hungry for success. All I had to do was tell you what you wanted to hear." Behind them, a doctor shouted clear, and Dorothy's body jerked as electricity surged through her. The heart monitor remained flatlined. Nicholas's world was collapsing, but Patricia just stood there, radiant and untouchable. "Why?" Nicholas's voice cracked. "Why would you do this? The money, the lies, making her suffer. What did Dorothy ever do to you?" Patricia's smile widened. "It was never about her, Nicholas. It was about control. When I met you in college, I saw potential. A brilliant young black man with something to prove, desperate enough to do anything for success. But you came with baggage. A poor mother from the projects, a past that would never play well with investors or board members. So I offered you a choice. Keep her and stay small, or let me handle her and become everything you dreamed of." She stepped closer, her heels clicking on the linoleum. "You chose success. You signed those papers. transferred that money, and walked away without a single backward glance. And you know what the beautiful part is? You didn't just abandon her once. You abandoned her every single day for 23 years. Every time you drove past a homeless person. Every time you donated to charity for the tax write-off. Every time you told interviewers you were self-made. You chose yourself over her, again and again and again. Nicholas felt bile rise in his throat. Every word Patricia spoke was true, and the truth was poisonous. "Where's the money?" he demanded, his voice shaking with rage. "The $750,000 I gave you for her care. Where is it?" Patricia pulled out her phone and showed him a photo. It was a beach house in the Hamptons, sprawling and magnificent. "Robert and I bought our first investment property with it. Flipped it for $2 million within a year. That seed money became $5 million, then $20 million, then $100 million. Your guilt money built an empire, Nicholas. Ironic, isn't it? You abandoned your mother to build your fortune, and I used that abandonment to build mine." She swiped to another photo, Robert Thornton on a yacht, champagne in hand, looking like a man who'd won at life. "Robert sends his regards. By the way, he's at the emergency board meeting right now, convincing your shareholders that you're unfit to lead Afrotech Solutions. By tomorrow morning, you'll be voted out, and Robert will own controlling interest in your company. Everything you built will belong to us." Nicholas lunged at her, but 2 security guards appeared from nowhere, restraining him. Patricia didn't even flinch. "Careful, Nicholas. Assault charges won't help your image." The doctors were still working on Dorothy, but their movements were slowing. Nicholas could see it in their faces. They were losing her. "Why are you here?" Nicholas shouted, struggling against the guards. "Why come to the hospital? Why not just let her die in peace?" Patricia's expression shifted, and for the first time, Nicholas saw something dark and hungry beneath her polished exterior. "Because I wanted to see your face when you realized the truth. I wanted to watch you understand that you didn't just lose your mother, you lost everything. Your company, your reputation, your marriage. Victoria already filed for divorce. By the way, she's at the penthouse right now with her lawyers, taking half of whatever Robert doesn't seize." She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And I wanted to make sure Dorothy died knowing that her precious son chose money over her until the very end. That even now, with her lying here dying, you're more worried about your company than holding her hand." Nicholas stopped struggling. The words cut through his rage like a blade, because they were almost true. He'd spent the last 5 minutes focused on Patricia, on revenge, on the money and the betrayal, while Dorothy fought for every breath behind him. Patricia saw the realization in his eyes and smiled. "That's what I thought. You haven't changed at all, Nicholas. You're still the same selfish boy who signed those papers." Nicholas wrenched free from the guard and spun back to Dorothy's bedside. The doctors had stopped working. The machines had gone silent. A nurse was gently removing the breathing tube. It was over. Dorothy Hill was gone. Nicholas collapsed beside the bed, grabbing his mother's still warm hand. "No, no, no. Mama, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please don't leave me. Please." But Dorothy's eyes remained closed, her chest still, her hand limp in his. 23 years of regret crashed over Nicholas all at once. Every missed birthday, every holiday, every moment he could have searched for her but didn't. He had abandoned her, and Patricia had exploited that abandonment. And now Dorothy was dead, believing her son never loved her. Patricia's heels clicked toward the door. "Enjoy your grief, Nicholas. I'll enjoy your company." She was almost gone when Nicholas heard it, a soft, wheezing gasp. He looked down. Dorothy's chest rose, just barely. The heart monitor beeped once, twice. Her eyes fluttered open. "She's alive," a doctor shouted, rushing back to the bedside. "She's breathing on her own." Nicholas's heart soared, but then Dorothy's hand squeezed his with desperate urgency. Her eyes were wide, terrified, and focused on something beside Nicholas. He turned. Patricia was still in the doorway, but her composure had shattered. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with shock, and behind her, stepping into the room with a briefcase and a cold smile, was someone Nicholas never expected to see, Marcus Chen, and he was holding a stack of documents that made Patricia stumble backward. "Hello, Patricia," Marcus said calmly. "I believe we have some business to discuss. Because unlike Nicholas, I've spent the last 5 years collecting evidence. And what I found is going to send you and Robert to prison for a very, very long time. Marcus is evidence that could destroy Patricia and Robert, but can Nicholas trust a man who hid the truth for 5 years? And what secret is Dorothy desperately trying to tell Nicholas before it's too late? Drop a comment if you think Marcus is really on Nicholas's side, and smash that subscribe button because next chapter is where everything explodes." Marcus Chen stepped fully into the hospital room, his briefcase held like a weapon. Patricia's confident smile evaporated as she backed against the wall, her eyes darting between Marcus and the exit. "I don't know what you think you have," Patricia said, but her voice wavered. "But whatever lies you've cooked up won't hold up in court." Marcus opened the briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "These aren't lies, Patricia. These are bank statements showing how you and Robert laundered Nicholas's $750,000 through 6 shell corporations. Wire transfer receipts proving you paid off city officials to have Dorothy arrested and blacklisted from every shelter in New York. Recorded phone calls between you and Robert planning to tank Afro Solutions stock by sabotaging our government contracts." He dropped the folder on the hospital bed, pages spilling across Dorothy's blanket. "And my personal favorite, emails between you and 3 Afrotech board members, detailing exactly how much you paid them to vote Nicholas out tonight. That's fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and elder abuse. The FBI has had copies of everything for 72 hours. Patricia's face went white. Behind Marcus, 2 federal agents in dark suits appeared in the doorway. "Patricia Morrison," one of them said, pulling out handcuffs. "You're under arrest." The room exploded into action. Patricia lunged for the documents, trying to destroy them, but the agents grabbed her arms and pinned them behind her back. She screamed, thrashing like a wild animal. "You can't do this. I have lawyers. I have connections. Robert Thornton was arrested 20 minutes ago," Marcus interrupted calmly. "Walked right out of the board meeting in handcuffs. Turns out those government contracts he sabotaged, they were Department of Defense projects. That's not just fraud, that's national security. He's looking at 20 years minimum." Patricia's legs gave out. The agents held her upright as they read her Miranda rights, but her eyes never left Marcus. "You're dead," she hissed. "Both of you. I'll make sure you lose everything. I'll destroy your families, your reputations, You already tried that," Marcus said quietly, "and you failed. Because unlike you, Patricia, I don't abandon the people I care about." He turned to Nicholas, who still clutched Dorothy's hand, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I needed ironclad evidence before making a move. If I'd told you 5 years ago, you would have confronted them, and they would have destroyed the evidence and disappeared. This was the only way to protect you and Dorothy." Nicholas looked at Marcus, then at the agents dragging Patricia out of the room, then back at Dorothy, who was breathing steadily now, her eyes open and fixed on her son's face. "Why did you wait?" Nicholas asked, his voice hoarse. "Why didn't you come to me the moment you found out?" Marcus sat down heavily in a chair, suddenly looking exhausted. "Because I was angry at you too, Nicholas. When I found Dorothy 5 years ago in that cardboard box, clutching your photo, she told me everything. How you never came looking for her. How you changed your phone number, moved to a gated community, erased every trace of your past. She thought you hated her. She thought she was a burden you were ashamed of." He rubbed his face, his composure cracking. "I sent her money every month because someone had to. I hired private investigators to track Patricia and Robert, built a case against them, all while watching you live in luxury without a care in the world. Part of me wanted you to lose everything. Part of me thought you deserved it." The word stung, But Nicholas couldn't argue. Everything Marcus said was true. But then I saw the video, Marcus continued. I saw Dorothy collapse on that street, and I saw your face when you realized who she was. Real pain, real regret, real love, buried under 23 years of guilt and fear. And I realized you weren't evil, Nicholas. You were just a coward who made a terrible mistake and spent decades running from it. Nicholas felt fresh tears spill down his cheeks. He looked at Dorothy, whose eyes were filled with understanding and forgiveness he didn't deserve. "Mama," he whispered, "I don't know how to make this right. I don't know how to fix what I broke." Dorothy's hand trembled as she lifted it to touch his face. Her voice was weak but clear. "You're here now, baby. That's what matters. You came back." But then her expression changed. Her eyes widened with urgency. She gripped Nicholas's hand tighter, pulling him closer. "Nicky, listen. There's something you need to know. Something I never told you. About your father." Nicholas froze. His father had died when Nicholas was 3 years old, or so Dorothy had always told him. A construction accident, quick and painless. They never talked about him. He didn't die in an accident, did he? Nicholas asked, his heart pounding. Dorothy shook her head weakly. "No, baby, is alive, and has been looking for you for 30 years. The room went silent. Even Marcus looked shocked. "What are you talking about?" Nicholas demanded, his mind reeling. "You told me he was dead. You showed me his death certificate. We visited his grave." Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. "I lied to protect you. Your father. His name is James Hill. He was involved in something dangerous back then. Bad people were after him, people who would have used you and me to get to him. So he faked his death, went into hiding, and made me promise to keep you safe by telling you he was gone." Nicholas's entire world shifted. Everything he thought he knew about his life, his identity, his past, it was all built on lies. Well-intentioned lies, maybe, but lies nonetheless. "Where is he?" Nicholas asked urgently. "Is he safe? Does he know about you?" Dorothy nodded weakly. "He knows everything. He's been watching from a distance for years. When I ended up on the streets, he tried to help, but I refused. I was too ashamed, too proud. I didn't want him to see what I'd become." She coughed, her body shaking with the effort. "But after the video went viral, he reached out to me at the hospital. He's been here. Nicky, he's been in this hospital, watching over me, waiting for the right moment to." A knock at the door interrupted her. Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway was a tall black man in his 70s, dressed simply in jeans and a worn jacket. His face was weathered but strong, his eyes sharp and intense. He looked at Nicholas, and recognition passed between them like electricity. Nicholas saw himself in the man's features, the same jaw, the same eyes, the same burden of regret. "Hello, son," James Hill said quietly. "I know you have questions, and I promise I'll answer every single one. But right now, there's something more important we need to discuss." He stepped into the room, his expression grave. Patricia and Robert weren't working alone. They were hired by someone much more powerful. Someone who's been planning to destroy you for years. And now that Patricia's been arrested, that person is going to make their move tonight. Nicholas stood, his mind spinning. Who? Who would want to destroy me that badly? James looked at Marcus, then back at Nicholas. "Victoria, your wife. She's the one who orchestrated everything." The words hung in the air like a bomb. Marcus shot to his feet. "That's impossible. We investigated everyone. Victoria's finances are clean. She had no connection to Patricia or Robert before she married Nicholas." "That's because she used a different name back then," James interrupted. "Victoria Rodriguez wasn't born Victoria Rodriguez. She was born Victoria Morrison, Patricia's younger sister." Nicholas felt the floor drop out from under him. Victoria, his wife of 15 years, the woman who shared his bed, raised his profile, stood beside him at every event. Patricia's sister, The entire marriage was a lie. A 15-year con. The prenup, Nicholas whispered, horror dawning. She made me sign a prenup that gives her half of everything if I'm deemed mentally unfit or morally compromised. She said it was to protect me from gold diggers. James nodded grimly. And now, with the scandal, the viral video, the arrests, she's going to use that clause to take everything. The board meeting wasn't about Robert taking over. It was about Victoria positioning herself to swoop in and claim she's saving the company from your disgrace. Marcus grabbed his phone, his fingers flying across the screen. The emergency shareholder vote. It's happening right now. If Victoria gets controlling interest before we can stop her. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his face went pale. She just won. Victoria Hill now owns 52% of Afrotech Solutions. You've been voted out. Nicholas. It's over. Nicholas lost his company. His wife is his enemy's sister, and his father just came back from the dead. But the biggest shock is still coming. Comment below if you saw the Victoria twist coming, and hit subscribe because next chapter is the explosive finale where Nicholas fights back, and you'll see if Dorothy survives and gets the justice she deserves. Nicholas stared at Marcus's phone screen, watching his empire crumble in real time. Victoria Hill, no, Victoria Morrison, now owned controlling interest in Afrotech Solutions, the company he had built from nothing. 20 years of blood, sweat, and sacrifice gone in a single shareholder vote. But as Nicholas looked at his mother lying in that hospital bed, her hand still holding his, something shifted inside him. For 23 years, he had measured his worth by his bank account, his reputation, his success. He had abandoned the woman who gave him life because he thought money and power were more important. Now, stripped of everything, standing in a hospital room with a mother who forgave him and a father he thought was dead, Nicholas finally understood what truly mattered. "Let her have it," Nicholas said quietly. Marcus looked up, stunned. "What?" "Nicholas, we can fight this. We can challenge the vote, claim undue influence, file injunctions." "No," Nicholas interrupted, his voice steady and calm for the first time in days. "Victoria can have Afrotech Solutions. She can have the penthouse, the cars, the bank accounts, all of it. I'm done running. I'm done choosing money over people." He looked at his father, James, who stood in the doorway with tears in his eyes. "For 30 years, I thought my father was dead because my mother loved me enough to lie. She sacrificed her truth to keep me safe. And what did I do? I sacrificed her for a lie I told myself, that success meant leaving people behind." Dorothy squeezed his hand weakly, her eyes shining with pride and relief. Nicholas turned to Marcus, his best friend who had protected Dorothy when he wouldn't. "You asked me why I never looked for her. The truth is, I was terrified of what I'd find. I was terrified she'd reject me, hate me, make me face the selfish coward I'd become. So I convinced myself she was better off without me, that the money I gave Patricia was enough, that I could outrun my guilt by building something bigger than my shame." He wiped his eyes, his voice cracking. "But you can't outrun love. You can't by redemption. And you can't build an empire on your mother's suffering without it eventually collapsing." James stepped forward and placed a hand on Nicholas's shoulder. "Son, you made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But you're here now. That's what matters. And if you're serious about making this right, I can help. I didn't spend 30 years in hiding doing nothing. I built something too. Not a company, but a network. People who owe me favors. Resources Victoria doesn't know exist." Marcus's eyes lit up with understanding. "You want to take the company back?" "No," James said firmly. "I want to give Nicholas something better than revenge. I want to give him purpose." He pulled out his phone and showed them a document. "This is a non-profit foundation I established 15 years ago, funded by money I earned working under different names, doing contract security work for people who value discretion. It's worth about $400 million, and it's designed to help homeless elderly people, specifically abandoned parents, get housing, health care, and legal support to reconnect with their families." Nicholas stared at the document, his heart pounding. "You built this, Mama." James nodded. I built it for her, and for every parent who gets left behind when their children chase success. Dorothy refused to let me help her directly. She was too proud, too heartbroken, but she couldn't stop me from helping others in her situation. He looked at Nicholas with intensity. I'm offering you a choice. Son, you can spend the next decade fighting Victoria in court, trying to reclaim a company that was built on abandonment and lies. Or you can walk away from that life and help me run this foundation. Use your business skills, your connections, your story to make sure no other parent ends up like Dorothy. No more billionaires seeing their mothers begging on the street because it's already too late. Nicholas looked at Dorothy, who was crying now, her frail body shaking with emotion. He thought about the young reporter in the parking garage who said his grandmother died alone on the streets. He thought about the 17 million people who watched that video and saw their own failures reflected in his. This was his chance, not to rebuild his empire, but to build something that actually mattered. I'll do it, Nicholas said. I'll walk away from Afro Tech Solutions. I'll sign over everything to Victoria in exchange for one thing. She drops all legal action against me so I can focus on the foundation. Marcus grabbed his arm. Nicholas, think about this. You're giving up billions of dollars. Your reputation is already destroyed. If you give her the company without a fight, people will think you're guilty, that you really did abandon your mother for money. Nicholas smiled sadly. I am guilty, Marcus. I did abandon her, and no amount of courtroom victories will change that. But this, he gestured to the foundation documents, this is how I make it right. The next 72 hours were a whirlwind. Victoria agreed to the deal immediately, probably unable to believe her luck. She got the company, the assets, everything. And Nicholas got his freedom. The media had a field day. Headlines screamed, "Disgraced billionaire gives up empire. Nicholas Hill walks away from fortune. Is this redemption or surrender?" But Nicholas didn't care. He moved Dorothy from Bellevue to a private medical facility where she could recover in comfort, paid for by James's foundation. He held her hand every day, reading to her, telling her stories, making up for 23 years of silence. Marcus initially struggled with a decision, but eventually joined Nicholas and James at the foundation, bringing his business expertise and his fierce loyalty. Together, the three men transformed the nonprofit into a power haze, using Nicholas's story, as painful as it was, to raise awareness and millions in donations. They opened shelters in 12 cities, created legal aid programs to help abandoned elders sue for support, and launched a national campaign called No Parent Left Behind that went viral for all the right reasons. 6 months later, Dorothy was strong enough to leave the medical facility. Nicholas bought her a beautiful brownstone in Harlem. Not a mansion, but a real home filled with warmth and love. He moved in with her, leaving behind the penthouse life permanently. James lived 3 blocks away, and the three of them, mother, father, and son, finally became the family they should have been all along. 1 year after the viral video, Nicholas stood on the stage of the Foundation's annual gala. The room was filled with donors, volunteers, and families who had been reunited through their programs. Dorothy sat in the front row, healthy and radiant, wearing a dress Nicholas had bought her and a smile that could light up the world. James sat beside her, holding her hand like a man who had finally found his way home. Nicholas approached the microphone, looking out at the crowd. A year ago, I was a billionaire who saw his 80-year-old mother begging on the street. That video destroyed my reputation, my marriage, and my company. It exposed me as a fraud, a coward, and a failure. He paused, his voice steady. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, because losing everything taught me what actually matters. My mother forgave me when I didn't deserve it. My father came back from the dead to give me a second chance. My best friend protected my mother when I wouldn't. And together, we built something more valuable than any company, a movement that says no parent should ever be abandoned, no elder should ever die alone, and no amount of success is worth sacrificing the people who made you who you are. The crowd erupted in applause. Dorothy stood, tears streaming down her face, and opened her arms. Nicholas stepped off the stage and walked into his mother's embrace, the embrace he should have never left. Behind them, cameras flashed and videos recorded. But this time, the world wasn't watching a billionaire's downfall. They were watching a son come home. And in a New York City courtroom 3 blocks away, Victoria Morrison Hill sat in handcuffs as federal prosecutors presented evidence that she had conspired with Patricia and Robert all along. Turns out Marcus had been investigating her too, and the Foundation's lawyers had been building a case the entire time Nicholas was rebuilding his relationship with Dorothy. Victoria would spend the next 15 years in prison, and Afro Tech Solutions would be liquidated, with the proceeds going to, you guessed it, the No Parent Left Behind Foundation. Nicholas Hill lost his billions but gained everything that mattered. His mother, his father, his soul, and every abandoned parent who would never have to beg on the street again because one man finally chose love over money. Thank you so much for staying until the end of this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me about a time you had to choose between success and family. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, because in the end, the only empire worth building is the one built on love. New story drops next week, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until then, remember, it's never too late to come home.